turn it over to you.
All right, hold on. I just got to get the pictures to move, and my cursor's being funny. Well, hi everybody. How are you doing? I hope we are all, weathering this as well as to be expected. At least the weather's starting to get a little nicer in some parts of the country. I know it's been cold. This is super exciting. I can't believe we're on our third of our 4 installment of webinars. And, I'll do the really quick introduction because a lot of us I know have been on this webinar together for the last 3 weeks. But just in case we have somebody new, my name's Allison King, and I'm the co-founder of Beauty 360 Consulting, which is the preferred provider for business education and one-on-one business consulting for the Cal Salon division. But what I think is more relevant for today is my husband Shannon and I own 2 salons in Brooklyn, New York. And so I think, when we go through the process of thinking about today, about leveraging our power and really gearing up to start thinking about what we have to think about to open, I think what's really important is to know that we're right here with you. While I think a number of you on the call might open before we do, even though we probably closed before you did, listen to the governor this morning. I'm like, I'm going to be in my house forever. But I think there's some real fun opportunity to work together and start thinking about, there's so much to do. How do we compartmentalize what we need to do so that it becomes really meaningful tasks that we can kind of work through. And then next time when we're together, we're going to talk about leveraging our people and really starting to look at our people a little differently and really how to become really awesome coaches and how do we drive performance through our team? Because, we talked last time about social distancing and safety, and obviously that's going to create some challenges or obstacles for us to work around with our salon business from a space capacity as well as potentially a number of client capacity. So if we have some restrictions, how can we really power up and amp up our team so that we can maximize every client that comes in? And so next time when we're together, we'll really talk about coaching and high speed coaching and getting the most out of our team so that we can, kind of take each of these pieces and build on it so that we're ready to rock and roll. So to get started today with, again, our third phase in our COVID recovery webinars, today we're going to be talking about leveraging our power. And when we think about leveraging our power, what I want us to really think about here is there's 2 things that are important to us right now. First off, how do we build client confidence? And when we think about client confidence, we're going to talk in just a second about 2 sets of clients, one being our employees. And on the flip side of that, also being the clients that we have coming back in. Because frankly, when I talk to salons around the country that are starting to open, and the first few that opened in Georgia, while the clients were ready to come in, the team really had some anxiety. So we'll talk about some ways to start thinking about that before we gear up to reopen. And then, making a little light, how do we also flatten our curve? And for those of you that know me, there is never a time in life that I want anything flat. I always want things that are going in an upward momentum. But when we think about this, we're going to have a large group of clients wanting to get service when we open. And if we don't really think about how we pace the business and their rebooking, we're going to very much have a sales curve that looks like this. Because we're going to have a rush when we first open, and then we're going to kind of sit there and wonder where everybody is, and then we might have another rush 8 weeks or so after. And so we want to get really strategic about how we put the pieces together so that we can, in all reality, rebuild our rebooking curve. Because we closed May 15th. In all reality, I doubt we'll open before June 1st. And if you think about that, that's a good 3 months. That's almost my entire book of rebooking that now is not on the book. And so we're going to have to think about this differently so that we can ensure the next 18 months we're not like this, but that we can get some stability to our business and then begin to grow off of that stability as we move forward. So that's our mission today to kind of talk through, and we'll go from there. So when we think about how do we build client confidence? The first thing I want to, in those 2 sets of clients, I want to start by talking about our team. And, what really hit me the other day is 2 things. One, how do we get our team ready to come back, right? And I know some of my clients are on the webinar with us today as well, and many of us have had these conversations. But for some of us, we have team members that are like, I wanted to work 6 days when I come back. And then we might have some team members that are like, come back when, how, are you sure? And how do you deal with those levels of anxiety? And so I think one of the things that we really need to be mindful of as we're going into this next phase is to really think about our team and think about whatever their response is okay, right? This isn't the typical day where, you know, Mary, your stylist, just doesn't want to come to work because she's lazy. You know, we've all had a very different experience during the weeks that we've been home. Some has been a fun opportunity to get the projects done they've never had a chance to, but some people have been through a lot of anxiety and depression, and some people are a little bit of everything, right? And so I think as owners, you know, we have to, as soon as you get close to getting a date, it's time to start really talking to your team individually and see how they're doing. And so that way you can begin to put the origami puzzle together, for lack of a better word, of how you can operate it related to social distancing and the requirements of your state, but then also based on your team, how does that layer in? Because that may mean everybody comes back at once and we're back to normal in some new capacity, right? But it also may mean that maybe you've got some people that you've got to phase in because they're not emotionally ready to be there. And so I think this is an opportunity because it's a different day that we think about this differently. And obviously for my clients on the webinar, you know about how I am about people come to work. They need to come to work. But I think in this situation, I think how we appropriately move them from home to work is going to speak volumes to who and how we are as leaders. I think the other thing that we want to think about on the back end of this, and you know, coming from corporate America, as a stylist, I'm not real into getting into people's personal business, because you just don't in a corporate environment, right? There's a lot of, kind of X-nays on the conversations you're allowed to have. But I think we also have to be mindful as we come to work, and this hit me the other day, that I just have this vision is when we get back in there and the clients come to start see us, everybody's been starved for attention, right? We don't get to see each other anymore. We don't get to be around other people except for Zoom. You know, I do my Zoom hugs, but it's still not as effective as a real hug, right? And my biggest fear for my team is they're going to spend, no matter how many clients we can get in a day, because our city will tell us, my biggest fear for them is they're going to listen to COVID story after COVID story after COVID story after COVID story all day long. And if we thought we had anxiety and depression before we got to work, how are we going to feel after hearing that all day long? And so one of the things I really want us to think about as we begin to prep and think about how we get our team motivated and ready to come back to work is to also think about how do we give them some tools and resources to do what I'll call flip the script. Right? So when somebody comes in and wants to talk about it, how do you have like a moment of empathy and then flip the script of, you know what, this is your moment to relax, enjoy yourself, look beautiful, and get your clients off of that conversation. And so one of the things you might just want to consider as we go into that is helping them know it's okay to do that and giving them some tools or some scripts, if you will, to how to have that moment of empathy so they don't seem like they don't care, but also prepare them with a script of exit, for lack of a better word, and how do I get out of this conversation and get to a more enlightening one, or get back to business even in how you talk about the work that we're doing or their long-term hair goals. And so I think those are really important as we move forward and kind of think about that. So now let's start diving into our clients. What's really important with our clients here is that we start to educate them about change and really get them geared up that we've learned a lot and celebrate how we've evolved. And when we think about that, we can really do this in a couple of different steps. I want us to think about how we communicate the things that have changed. So for example, if you're in a situation that you're phasing your team into work, right? Because of some of the size restrictions or the number of people you can have in your salon restrictions. Or maybe you're extending your hours or extending your days, but something that adjusts your regular team schedule. Think about how you communicate that to your clients up front, right? Think about how you communicate what the capacity restrictions are and how you're going to be actively handling it. If obviously our disinfection and sanitation practices are going to be on a whole new level with needing to offer PPE and all that kind of stuff, how do you get the client to know before they come what to expect? I just had this vision of one of my managers, Diana, a client didn't know that things that were going to change in New York City. I'd hope you'd know, but maybe didn't know. And then the first thing you do is see Diana and a thermometer in her face. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't feel like an empathetic experience. So how can we get them to start to see, look at all the things we're doing to keep you and our team safe, and let them know what that might look like. You know, a couple of things that we're going to do as we get closer to open is we're not only going to shoot a video for our team to be able to teach them what our new standards are, but how do you do that with your clients as well, right? How do you get them to see, you know, here's what you can expect from us so that you feel safe. And then also, maybe there's some tutorials on how to do certain things that they're going to need to. You know, in New York City, we're mandated to wear masks when we leave the house. We're going to mandate that they wear a mask when they get their hair done. Well, you know what? If I'm cutting their hair short, I might not want the elastic behind their ear. How do I deal with that? Well, maybe I do a training video that shows them when, you know, when you're asked, we're going to ask you to do this. Hold your mask in place. I'll take the rubber band off, you know, and then we put the rubber band back on. Like, think about how those steps and mechanics are going to work. You know, on a side note to that, even with your team, you know, we have Friday 5 o'clock happy hours with our team on Zoom. And, you know, one of the things we told the team last week is like, let's start to think about what's going to be different. They're going to have to wear a mask all day. So, you know what, when you're home, start wearing your mask all day. Like, we've got to start getting used to what it's going to feel like, sound like, that kind of stuff. You know, we're going to really, really, really hope and probably require that they wear their gloves, right? So if they're going to be wearing gloves, start doing stuff with gloves on now. Like, style your own hair with gloves on, play with your kids' hair with gloves on. Like, we've got to get used to the difference in the touch so that we are able to be effective and not look like it's our first, you know, it's our first gig trying this out when we get back together as a team. We're also going to talk about how we revolutionize our offerings and propel us into the future. And let me just take this to the next slide when we keep talking about educating with change. You know, I think when we also think about our clients, it's time that we check in. And one of the things that's most important is that we humanize this, right? Like, I was joking with Shannon the other day and I said, okay, like, I've been trying to send an email out to clients every other week just to kind of keep them engaged. And last time we sent some tutorials and, you know, how to do certain styles at home. And I'm like, what do I talk about now? Like, I can only send buy a gift card out so many times and it starts to look strange, right? But so let's start thinking about it. You know, maybe there's an opportunity to engage with your clients now and just check in on how they're doing. You know, one of the things that we're going to do next week is we're going to ask our clients how many of them are essential workers, or who's an essential worker or a healthcare worker. Because you know what, those might be the people we call first to schedule appointments as a thank you, right? You know, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to be offering virtual consultations. You know, maybe we do a video that shows them about the virtual consultations we'll be doing so they can kind of understand what it might look or sound like. You know, maybe you think about offering opportunities for non-peak times so that people with special needs or special levels of anxiety know that they have special times that they can come in. They'll definitely be away from everybody, right? And we've got a couple morning shifts that just happens naturally because we have less people working, right? So why not maximize that? You know, I think about how some of the things you've had to do has changed. So for example, one of the things we're doing is we're ordering screens to go between the stations and the shampoo bowls. You know, is there an opportunity? You know, we're actually going to promote a more private service during the days, right? Because while I'll have a screen between every station, in the morning, I use 2 stations until 11 o'clock when someone gets in. So I can move those around and make it like their own room. If I've got, you know, clientele that maybe can't let other people see their hair or things like that. You know, think how we can leverage some of the things we've had to invest in to our benefit in helping us maybe gain a larger clientele. You know, we've talked about making sure you tell clients about capacity or schedule changes that they might experience up front. Also, if you're going to do anything different with services, you know, we talked last time, and I think we'll talk a little bit later about looking a little at triage services, like what happens in those first couple weeks so that you can get as many clients in as you can, because everybody's going to want to get done. You know, maybe you explain the concept that you're doing. You know, I've got some clients that might not offer blow dry short term so they can get more clients in. If that's going to be the case, make sure your clients understand all of that. You know, one of the things that we're communicating, because it feels awkward, is around disinfection. If we don't have wipes at the time, which is the only PPE I have not been able to source yet. Otherwise, I think we'll be an outpatient surgical center when we're closed. I have enough PPE for to last me 6 months. But one of the things I didn't think about is if I'm using disinfectant spray, the contact time has to sit for 10 minutes before it's disinfected, right? So won't that look awkward? And I know, if I do have a client that's in waiting, that they see that their stylist is ready, but we're not getting them started, right? Well, why not? Because the chair's got to sit with disinfectant on it for 10 minutes, right? So again, think about some of those nuances that might be odd. Maybe you can make some fun videos about it. Maybe you can go in an email blast to clients to let them know about their next visit, but it'll really give them an opportunity to feel like they're part of change and to be really proud in the efforts that we've put in to make them feel safe. What questions do we have, if any? Christine, are you taking questions today, or is it Autumn?
I got the questions going. We just got a request that you share your vendor for the screens, which I know that we have, so we can.
Yay, I'm one step ahead. It's later in the presentation. Any others, or I'm off the hook?
You're off the hook for now.
Woo, let me shoot some screen before someone thinks of one. Just kidding. So now let's start to think about as we revolutionize our offering. And so there's 3 things that we want to consider here. How and if we've had the opportunity to support our community, what services offerings might we be offering, and how are we going to relate to time? And so as I go through here, I'm going to give you a lot of different options because we have a lot of different salons in here, and certain things are going to work for some better than others. But what we have to think about now is we can't be the exact same salon we were, before we closed. We have to be able to think about how do we, take the value that we offer to our client to the next level, whether it's in safety, whether it's in new offerings or cool things. So when you think about community, really start to think about, was there anything that anyone on your team or your salon did to support the community while you're closed? I have one client that went around to salons and collected gloves and brought them to healthcare workers. I have an employee that actually helped deliver. We have in Brooklyn, we have a charity that's delivering lunch to healthcare workers. And she did some deliveries around to healthcare workers. Those on last time got to see that one of the things we're doing is we allowed clients to nominate a healthcare worker that's made a difference during COVID-19, and we're offering complimentary services. So think about how, if there's any great stories that you can share or ways that you can continue to support your community. I think we're always such the human side of business that I think it's only going to continue to represent who we are as salon owners and hairdressers, and as humans inside of our business. And I think that is so important right now after everything people have been through. When we think about new service offerings, I'll talk a little bit later, but one of the things that we're going to be offering is thinking about video consultations. And we mentioned this briefly last time, but what I want you to start thinking about is, how does this affect short-term, right? Because short-term, the idea of virtual consultations for us was really about triage, right? It was about trying to understand, did you do something to your hair since I saw you last? Because I need to know, will it fit in a 30-minute time slot or not? And if it doesn't, now let's get the right time slot for it when it works for the business. But it's also come into the conversation of, as an example, if I was a balayage client and I push it 4 months because I think I can get 4 months out of my balayage, and my appointment was March 17th, guess what? I didn't get my hair done. And so now I'm a 4-month balayage that might be a 6 or 7 month balayage before I open back up. I can't make that beautiful in one visit. I can make it better in one visit. I can probably make it beautiful in 2. And so using those virtual consultations again to be able to kind of know what that's going to mean. And we'll go through some of the tips and tricks of how we're starting to evolve and thinking about how we're using this. And then last but not least, in focus services, what I want you to start thinking about, and I use 45 minutes because it's an easy block of time, right? When we think about 45-minute time blocks, there's a lot of services that can fit in that time block, right? And so if we're going to have restrictions on either we can only be at 25% of capacity, or only 10 people in the salon at the same time, or whatever the restriction might be, really take the opportunity to look at your appointment book like a game board, right? I love Tetris, so a game board, my Tetris board. And start to think about, in this triage, the first few weeks we're open, are there focused services that we can do that get our clients from where they are now to the next visit, which might be sooner than their usual rebooking cycle, to get them repaired, for lack of a better word. Because those 45-minute cycles, if I can't double book because of my restriction, it gives me, if everything's done on a 45, really good blocks that I can fill, if that makes sense. And so, again, one of the things I love to do as I'm starting to think through that process for our salons is I grab Post-it notes, and we have a lovely door that's a mirror here in my mom and dad's house. And that's been my inspiration, right? I've got different color Post-its for different services, and I'm starting to think about how would they come together? What goes where? You know, when do I actually want, if somebody's a project, when do I actually want them on the book? Again, going back to the doctor example we had last time. And last but not least, I want us to think about time. And when we think about time, I want us to think a little bit about, and this is a concept, about how we charge for services. And this may fit something you're thinking, it may not. But I'm just starting to marinate on, you know, if these restrictions aren't short term, right? They become longer term. You know, as my husband and I, as salon owners in New York City, we can't operate at 25% capacity for long term and pay rent, right? Like, our rents are crazy. So how do we start possibly thinking about our industry differently and thinking about how we charge differently? And I'm not saying this is something we're ready to pull the trigger on right when we open, but it's something that's becoming more and more interesting that we're starting to explore. And we're starting to see it happen in our industry already. Last time I talked to you about Salon Scale, where we talked about parts and labor, right? And so when we think about time, if I'm going to long-term not be able to double book, because, right, our models today work because we can take multiple clients. Give me a nod if you agree, right? Our models today work because we can take multiple clients. If that becomes a restriction for us down the road, then maybe we look at not charging for the service that we're offering, but charging for the time that's used. And so let's think about this, and I'll use a single process example. You know, before I closed, if it was a retouch, it's 30 minutes process, 30 minutes blowout, right? So that's an hour and a half all told. Well, currently I'm only worried about the 30 minutes because I could stick 2 more things in because the apprentice blow dries, right? Well, if I can't do that model because I've got to be one-on-one with my client and I can't double book, I now have to think about how I collect revenue differently. And so maybe we looked at the service prices go up because they're paying for the entire block of time. And so what does that look like? How does it look different, right? So when we think about this, if someone's going to pay for an hour and a half of my time, you know, there's some things that have to be different, right? Like, my consultation should be amazing, right? And I should really be thinking about long-term hair journey, where we are, where are we going, what are the steps going to look like, right? My time working, putting on my retouch, blow drying hair, right? My time working, putting on the retouch should be about her hair, not chit chat. My time processing can be our opportunity to chit chat, right? When my time blow drying, if I'm choosing to blow dry, because I know some salons aren't going to blow dry in the short term. If I'm choosing to blow drying, then that can be about a styling lesson, right? Now a client's paying more, but they're getting more than they're getting today. Right now they're getting their hair done as quickly as I can, and then the assistant's finishing things off. And so if we can create a better value and a better experience for our client, they would probably be willing to pay more. Because think about it today, and I don't think there's anybody on the webinar that I would say we charge what we're worth today. And I know coming out of COVID, a lot of us are sensitive. Should I raise my prices? Shouldn't I raise my prices? And, you know, it's the question to everyone. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to have a profitable financial model that will allow us to have a stable business grow. And if we can create more value and not just charge more for doing the same thing, but really create more value, I think there would be a very interesting niche for this for people who want that exclusivity, that people who want that individual time, and certainly right now, people who want less people around them, right? Because this would certainly create that as well. So again, like I said, not something I'm willing to jump off and really dive into right immediately when we open, but we are starting to think of how does this evolve over time? Because if we get to September and we still have restrictions, right? I need to start looking at this differently. I can go at a capacity for a length of time, but at some point the model has to shift if I can't go back to some of what I've been doing before. And so just start noodling on it as a concept that might work for you. You know, I've been talking to random people about it. And I think what's interesting, because that's what you do with your car, because that's kind of what doctors do. You have your lab stuff and you have your office fee and things like that. It's not an unforeseen concept to a consumer to pay for parts and labor, you know what I mean? Or pay for the time and the work and the parts. So I think it's something that might be interesting, and that post-COVID might really look to us as an opportunity for change. So I'll take any questions.
The questions in the chat will give people a minute, but I completely agree. And I feel like now might be the perfect time to make that change because people are expecting change.
Absolutely, right? And again, you've got to think about how far you can go, because you don't want to outprice yourself. But again, you can't necessarily compare that experience to what you're giving today, because it's a different experience, right? And it's an exclusive experience. And I think it's something people don't get today, right? We get, you know, pre-COVID, you know, there's a line for everything. 50 people are doing stuff at once. You know, it's fast-paced and hectic. This takes the experience to a whole new level that I think people might be really, really interested in. So it's something that we're exploring and starting to look at more and more now that we're starting to hear states open up and kind of what the restrictions are for them.
Carla,
any other questions?
Yeah, how will you calculate your COVID fee is one of the questions.
Okay, so here's the reality of that, and I'm gonna say I'm not, but I don't mean I'm not, okay? So for those of you on the call that are Green Circle salons, and I'm not saying go sign up for Green Circle, people don't need additional expenses right now, I'm just using the example of how I'm doing it. I'm not gonna have a line item on my receipt called the COVID fee, okay? Or the PPE fee or something like that, right? What I am doing, and you could use the name as inspiration, but because I'm a Green Circle salon, I used to call it my green fee, which everybody gets except for one client, because if you come to New York City that often, a lot of places still required cash, and they thought it was my fee for cash. And I'm like, because they were paying with green. I'm like, no, it's recycling, but okay, thanks. But we've changed the name of that to an environmental stewardship fee. And so I already today, and don't quote me on the numbers because I'm just using this as an example and I don't remember off the top of my head what my Green Circle fee actually is that they charge us. But let's say Green Circle charges me $1. I charge my client $3 today. So I already have a markup or a margin or profit on Green Circle, okay? What I'm doing going into the future is I'm changing the name to environmental stewardship. And we are now changing that to a percentage of sales. So that clients who create more waste, balayage, color, things like that, are going to pay more into that environmental stewardship fee than somebody who just gets a haircut. But we're also building into that percentage of sales the cost of the PPE, as well as, for those of you who were on the webinar last time, you know I'm going cashless. And when we look at cashless, that'll now be merchant service fees on gratuity that I don't have today. And that fee is being built in there as well. And so I see our environmental stewardship is not just about recycling, but it's about creating a safe environment for our clients, which includes PPE and not having to touch other people's cash. So that's how we're doing it. There's a million ways to do it. I just, you know, if you are, you know, like, and I hope Tony and Cher don't care if I use them as an example, but I can see them. So, you know, if you're doing something where, you know, they've got an employee making beautiful masks and they're selling them, yeah, somebody could buy a mask. I'm lucky that I'm in a city that I can't imagine a New Yorker doesn't have a mask and isn't willing to wear a mask, right? Just because of what we've been through. And so I'll have disposable ones for them in case, in case they come with like the big scarf mask or, something that I just can't work around. But I am building that into a cost. I'm just not calling it PPE or COVID.
Makes sense. Thank you. We're good for now.
It also allows me to then not have to change it if someday I don't have to provide masks. Because if I call it a PPE fee, if in 6 months we don't have to provide PPE anymore, then they're going to hope that comes off the ticket. It's revenue for me now. It's not coming off the ticket. All right, cool. Any other questions? I'm good? All right, awesome. All right, so now let's start to think about how we propel into the future. And I think this is what's going to make the difference between each of the salons on this webinar and other salons around them. We've learned a lot from COVID, separate from being in our houses, and I've learned to cook more dinner things than I ever wanted to know how to cook. But we've learned a ton. And how do we take those learning into new experiences for our client that can be powerful beyond being closed? And so I'll use a couple examples. I talked about cashless being one thing, now that they can tip on card. We have an app that goes with our salon software, and hope they're going to be able to pay right from their app. So they're not even going to have to touch my credit card machine, which I'm super excited about. Less things I have to write down on a regular basis. But how many, by nods, how many of you have been doing curbside pickup, right? For retail, right? Well, there's a lot of you that have. And you know what? Do your clients like it? Give me a nod again, yes or no? Yeah, they love it. So, one of the things that we're working on is during this, our software provider, and some of them already have this, mine didn't, but my software provider, it did a partnership with Shopify. And so we're now creating an online store for the retail that we sell that's attached to our website. And so we're going to keep, we're not doing curbside pickup right now just because I'm in Florida, but we know our clients would love to be able to walk or drive by and just have a bag ready for them because it's convenient, right? And so this way they can go right on our Shopify store, purchase everything they want. It comes through to my location. It takes it right out of my inventory, just like it's a regular sale through my register. And then they can come just walk by and we'll have a bag awaiting. Or ship it to them if they want us to. Obviously, they'll have to pay the shipping fee. But that's not something I ever considered doing before. Clients would come in for walk-in retail, but they'd have to shop it, they'd have to wait and pay. But now just call me when you're almost there, and I'll walk outside with the bag, open the window, I'll check it in, right? Who thought I didn't think of doing that before, right? So let's think about what are some of those services that we've been offering now and how they might benefit our client moving forward. I mean, for some of us, think about the gift card sales we sold during this, right? I've never been a great gift card seller, and partly just because I don't focus on it, and I should. But I've sold a huge number of gift cards for me. How do I keep that initiative going now that I've got them, knowing we have them and using them, right? So that we can continue to propel that into our future. I think what's important here is we want our clients, particularly now, to start to really feel pride and confidence about their salon and really think about how their continued support has really made us even stronger than we were pre-COVID. And I know in a lot of ways we say stronger because we have so much to deal with. But we've been nimble and thought of new things that we have, like virtual consultations. How many of us do that on a regular basis? Post-COVID, make it a charged service. Think about how we can leverage technology involved in going into reopening in a way that our clients can really be excited about that. And I think what's important about this, and I'll just use Brooklyn as an example, but 3 weeks ago, you were hearing about all the businesses closing, and people were posting stuff, and just trying to keep the momentum going, right, with their clientele on Instagram or in emails or things like that. And now the longer we've been home, you start to see the less of that communication that's happening. And I think by revving that up and sharing what we've been thinking about and doing gives them more confidence, because we're at a tipping point in Brooklyn that now we're starting to see the businesses that won't come back, right? And so if our clients can see, look at the cool things we're doing, think about all the people they're going to share that with on their Zoom calls, since they can't go see everybody, and creating more opportunity for us as we get ready to reopen. Any questions before we go into flattening the curve? Cool.
Real quick, one question. They all want to know what software you use for
Oh,
your.
joy. I don't sell software. I happen to use shortcuts. I am a firm believer that they are the lesser of evils, just like cell phone service. But I enjoy shortcuts. It works really well for me. I have a lot of clients that love Forest. So that's my only sales pitch. Okay. So now let's talk about flattening the curve. And I know when you guys heard flattening the curve, you're like, what curve are you talking about? And I think for me, my biggest kind of keep me up at night is to really think about how we pace business once we reopen. Okay. Because here's the reality. And if you ever watch Governor Cuomo each day, he goes through the facts and then he goes through his opinion. Okay. So we're going to put Allison's opinion on the top of this. Okay. But when we think about what's going to happen, if I look at everything that's happening in salons I know that are opening, we're going to have a rush when we first open that we have to think about, right? But then what we're going to have to think about what happens after that, right? And will business go back to normal? Will business be softer than normal? Will our sales cycle look like this? Because now we have this rush and then there's nobody and then we have this rush. How do we really start to level that off? And so I see that we do that when we talk about flattening our curve by looking at focused services, virtual consultations, and winning the booking game. And so when we start to talk about focused services, I want you to think about the types of services that you offer. Like what can't happen, and I'm not saying can't, I'm just really hoping we can work around this. If every client comes in and gets a full beauty makeover when they're in with us, right? One, they're taking too much time. We could have gotten 3 more clients in, right? But 2, what then happens, right? If they still have fear of the future, they're going to go and start to try to stretch their visits. And now everything's taken care of. So it's easy for them to do that, right? So let's think about how we start to triage what they need done. And you know, when I think about that, I'm gonna kind of go into routine and start to think about what this means. So how can we be most efficient in how we book, and how can we pace current and future appointments? So last time I used an example and I talked about a doctor's office. And when we look at a doctor's office, they have well visits, they have sick visits, they have surgical time. We don't get to come in when we want to. We get to come in when we want to of when he's taking well visits or when he's doing surgeries, right? So let's start to think about how that concept in those first 4 weeks could apply to us, right? So let's think about it. And these are ideas, they're not, but let's think about it. Do we look at the people that we book first, right? Because, you know, if I don't open till early or mid-June, I'm not going to have much on my book at that point, right? Because all my rebooking is passed. I don't have a lot of, you know, all year booked out appointments. Although we run about 70% rebooking. So do I look at the clients that are due now? Like, do I run my database of people who haven't been in a while? And do I potentially start with people who are due now? Those are easy fixes, right? If you had a balayage right before we closed, it's time for your balayage again. I can do that easily, right? There's not a lot of, holy cow, what do I got to do to fix this to that? Do I then start to go into my people with extended routes? And do I start to talk about those people with extended routes in how that 2-visit component happens, right? And I'll talk about that a little bit more in the virtual consultation. And then do I start talking about what I'll call the projects, you know, either the people who, you know, did something to their hair while we were closed and now we have to fix it. Or maybe it's some of our double processes that now have such extended routes that we have to think about how we do those differently, right? But think about how that pacing would look if you were working on those 45-minute time blocks so that you could maximize what you're doing. I'm going to topic hop slightly because what I also want you to think about here, and I'm hoping I'm not pulling it. Nope, I'm going to pull it forward. So I'm going to pull it. I already set it up, so I'm going to go. I also want you to think about here 2 things. One, think about if you want to save room for essential workers and call them first. if you know some of the people who they are. But here's also a really important one. If you sold a ton of gift cards, if you sold more gift cards than you usually do, and you are not in a fabulous cash situation right now, maybe you use those gift cards to make your last payroll. What I want you to think about is how you book those gift card clients when they come back in. Okay. So I have one client who sold over $18,000 worth of gift cards. If she had spent all of that, she didn't, but if she had spent all of that to make her last payroll, she now doesn't have that revenue to pay people when she opens. Give me a nod if that makes sense. Yes? Okay. So if she lets those clients book when they want to and they all come in the first 2 weeks, would we all agree then she has no revenue? Yes? Yeah. So think about how you pace it. So I'll use an example. If, I think we sold around $5,000 worth of gift cards. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to book our healthcare workers first as a thank you. Anyone that lets us know they are one, and essential employees. But then I'm actually going to go to the list of people who I know bought a gift card when I was closed. And I'm going to strategically book appointments for them, right? So what does that look like? That's going to look like me calling, and since I can see Tony or Tony Ann and share, I'm going to say, hey, Tony Ann, how are you? It's so excited. We're opening on June 1st, whatever the date might be. I'd love to get you locked in for your reservation. My first available reservation for your service is June 5th, right? I might have something available earlier, but I'm going to try to pace them so that I can start to think through how those gift card sales are going to be coming in so that I don't end up upside down my first 2 weeks with all my gift cards coming in, because 60 to 70% of gift cards purchasers will use them in the first 60 days. But if I can pace those over the first couple weeks, then I'm able to manage my cash flow a little bit better. And so based on what you sold, if you were smart and you kept that money aside for when you open, bonus. If it became what got you through closing, cool, it happened to a number of us, but just be really smart in how you pace those appointments coming back in so it doesn't catch you on the back end. Okay. So now let's talk about virtual consultations. Why do them? We're coming into a very different time, right? When have we had the majority of our clients that we haven't seen for 3 months? Now, granted, I do a whole lot of balayage, so maybe I've got a good bunch of them, but it's not the norm, right? And so I think part of this virtual consultation is really going to be about the opportunity to reconnect with our clients. Start to plan their hair journey and align them or start warming them up to what the steps are going to be to get them back to their favorite hair ever, right? So I think it's also going to be important to be able to then check in when it comes to retail to understand what they're going to need. And I almost call it pre-sale, even though you're not selling it, but that way, when they come in, oh, they're almost out of shampoo, conditioner, and they need their styler. So we can have that stuff waiting for them. And so part of why I think this is going to be important is, one, our clients are going to love having a connection. They miss us, right? But two, the reality is with restrictions, every minute on the book is gold. And I can't have someone I book for 30 minutes come in and I really need 2 hours and send them away because somebody else could have fit in that 30-minute spot. And if you're in a city center and have larger rent, that's going to make a big difference. If you lose a couple of those appointments a week, that could be the difference between whether you make your rent or you don't coming out of this. When I think of who we're targeting, one, obviously anyone who touched their hair at home, right? And it could have turned out lovely and cool, then it's a 30-minute appointment. We're fine, or a 45-minute appointment. But if it didn't turn out the same, I need to know up front how much time I'm going to need so that I can set myself up for success. I think it's also going to be important here. Like, let's go to that balayage that might have grown out 6 or 7 months now, right? Depending on when we open. The reality for her is this is a 2-step process to get you looking as beautiful as you did last time I saw you. There's way too much growth in the hair. And I want her to start to understand why. And so this is my opportunity to say, well, you know what, it's grown out nicely, but we've got to think about what's going to be different. Because otherwise she's going to think you're going to come in and in one step, like magic, you're going to make her look exactly like she did. That might not be the case. And so this gives us the opportunity to start warming up to that two-step program, knowing that we're going to want to think about how we book that two-step program to kind of build our rebooking cycle back. And I'll talk about that in a second. And I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, it's been a question. Who is going to conduct the virtual consultations? For example, there's a salon that has 20 stylists, so they had over 6,000 appointments that had to be canceled. So that's at least 1,000 clients to reschedule.
It's going to be a fun couple weeks once you get a date, isn't it? You know, being in Florida, I finally gave up having my front desk reschedule people because it was just costing me money that was going to get rescheduled again. And thank God for a 12-year-old daughter that was like, Mom, why don't you just hit the microphone, say the phone number, then paste the thing in and text them. So I ended up texting all the clients from my cell phone. It's going to be great when we reopen because, you know, they're just going to call the cell phone. So here's what and that's what we're kind of working through right now. So this is our, what I'll call short version of what I think we're going to do. We are a salon that we don't give information out to our stylists. So they don't have their clients' names, formulas, phone numbers, any of that kind of stuff. So no, that's my vibe and my tribe. And so we're trying to think about what do we do. I also, the last thing I need to do is go buy 10 iPads so I can execute this, right? Because I just bought a couple $1,000s worth of PPE. I don't need iPads now. So because of what I do here, I already have a Zoom account. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is we'll have a Zoom account for the salon, which is relatively inexpensive depending on how many users you put in. We have 2 locations, so we're going to set up 2 users for each location. And then when our front desk begins to call, we're going to have a schedule blocked of when we do virtual consultations for each stylist. So that they can kind of do them boom, 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 boom. And then then we will schedule those just like this got scheduled on your calendar as a salon for the stylist and the client to get together. We'll then give our stylist the login to our Zoom account. So when it's their hour window or whatever it is to do consultations, they can log into the Zoom account from their phone. They can do the virtual consultation because it'll already been scheduled. But that way they don't get the client's emails. They don't get their phone numbers, any of that kind of stuff, just because in our vibe and tribe, that doesn't fly for us. And I think outside of buying equipment, I think that's going to be the cheapest option for us to do it. And so since I already have a Zoom account, we'll just add a couple more users to it and make them salon specific users.
And are you going to charge for those?
The virtual consultations that we do to get back open, we are not going to charge for, because frankly, at the end of the day, I want to see you, and I want to go like this so I can see what I'm dealing with. Offering this as a service down the road, I think we will keep it as a service, and we absolutely will charge for it. Because I think in our world, any double process, we should be doing this on. Anybody that's corrective color, we should be doing this on. And then we just have a lot of people that I want my hair colored, but I don't know what. And this gives us another opportunity. And I think, you know, being in New York City, people don't always want to come all the way to the salon. Like we get clients from the Bronx and Queens, but we're in Brooklyn. They don't want to come to the salon for a 30-minute consultation, you know? And I think that'll really set us up for success, because in our world, every time it's a double process, it's usually pink, green, purple, something fun along with it, which, you know, they never tend to tell you over the phone. So any other questions?
No, that's it.
All right, easy. All right, so when we talk about winning the booking game, here's what I want you to think of. Okay, again, this will be my biggest win if we can all get through this and mechanically have built our rebooking cycle back into our business. And so again, the reality is, if we don't open till June, and for those of you opening in May, make us proud, keep your counts down so we can open too. But think about how we do this, because we can't do this the same we've always done, right? It won't work. So I'm going to use some examples, and I apologize, I'm going to look at my notes just because I wrote them out so that the timing worked. So let's think about it. If you have somebody who has overgrown roots, and I mean excessively overgrown roots, it's now not a root touch-up, it's a virgin application. By some nods, would you agree, right? And so when we think about that, it might take me 2 applications because of the amount of regrowth to get it look as perfect as it looks before. So my way overgrown retouches, I might wipe back in 4 weeks so that I can refresh that root again, work on that area that was overgrown again, and get them to an even, polished, shiny, beautiful single process again. My current retouches, meaning they're barely a little bit past, but we're good, right? For those of you that haven't been closed as long as New York City will be. Maybe we book those from 4 to 6 weeks, which is kind of our typical booking cycle, right? So now we have a layer of clients coming back in 4 weeks. We have a layer of clients coming back between 4 and 6 weeks. Now, if I have an overgrown balayage, right? And those ladies love to wait 3-4 months if they can, right? I may tell that client they have to be back in 6 weeks, right? Because if they're significantly overgrown, one attempt at a balayage is not going to get that beautiful blend that I had prior to them when I was doing it regularly, right? So I may book that client at the 6-week mark. So now I have a 4 to 6, and now I have a 6-week mark. See how this is building together? Then if somebody comes in and they were in at the beginning of March or the end of February and it's their timing, I'm going to get them back from their balayage in 8 weeks. And this is the refresh. I'm just refreshing their glaze. I may not be doing their full balayage again. So now I have a 4-week client, a 4 to 6 week client, an 8-week client. And I'm building that rebooking curve back out so that I don't have peaks and valleys in it. And I think that's going to be a very tactical thing you're going to have to talk your front desk through. I would even consider some signage that you keep at your front desk or at your station that kind of talks about the new norm for rebooking in coming back, so that we can, after this first 3-week rush, that we can really have an even cycle built for ourselves going out the next 8 weeks. And that will help us, within 2 visits of the client to get back to where we were, versus it being ups and downs for 12 or 18 months until it happens naturally. And so I think that's my biggest challenge to the group as we move forward, is making sure that we really think about the cadence of our clients so that we can get from a roller coaster, to a nice uphill trajectory, and really start not just stabilizing our business, but building in growth for the future. What questions do we have?
Are you going to charge the same?
So I'll answer the question, and if I didn't answer it, then put another question in the chat. I'm going to charge for the services that I'm offering, right? So if I'm doing a balayage and it comes out pretty, but I don't quite have that faded blend that I get with the every 8 to 12 week cadence, and I have to do it again in 6 weeks, I'm going to charge her for the balayage again. Because it's the work we do, right? Now, one of the things I am considering, and this came from our calls yesterday, I think it was, they're all running together now, is I am considering offering, I'll call it a twofer, and I don't quite mean it to sound as corny as a twofer, but if there's a 2-step process and they're going to have to come in sooner than they're used to coming in to get them back to beautiful, I may offer a discount, which I don't typically do, but maybe $20 off or 20% off. I'm still marinating on it. But to do that, to prepay for their second appointment. So almost sell it like a package or a series for those 2 visits so that I can guarantee the future income. Now, if I'm going to do that once I'm open, every week I'm going to run a report on what I put on clients' accounts, and I'm going to put it, remember we talked about in our first webinar on my don't spend account. I'm going to put it in my don't spend account so that I don't catch myself in trouble later, because I've gotten a lot of cash flow now, but I'll need it for later. And so I will be very mechanical about that short term, so that way, if for some reason I do need some, I am very focused on knowing where I took it from, versus just have it sitting in my operating account thinking it's money to spend. And then when the payroll comes through, that a bunch of these people who paid for a series or a package come back, that now I don't have the cash flow. So just kind of think about those pieces and parts as we go through. Hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, that definitely answers it. The other question was, do you currently charge for in-person consultations?
I currently do not. I should, but I do not.
That answers the question.
You know, here's the reality of it. We have to have a profitable model. Coming out of that, what it means to be profitable is probably going to be different. You know, I look even where we are, even if I'm given PPP, right? And I can use 25% of that for rent and utilities. If I'm still closed in June, that's 3 months rent. You know, PPP for me only covers 1.5 months rent at 25%. So, you know, I got to start looking at how am I going to create enough revenue to continue to sustain over a period of time until I can get caught up. And again, we're blessed that we've got, you know, we save for these types of things. But at the same token, as you guys know, I have that in my don't spend account, and that means don't spend it. So I don't want to spend it if I can avoid spending it, so that I've got that mechanical thought in how I build our income. And we're worth it. I mean, come on, look at everybody at home right now. We have roots. They appreciate us now more than ever. Any other questions? I'm good? All right, so 2 things really quickly for you. One, you guys asked me about the screens. So I don't sell screens, but I have a good friend who does. And so Kmark, if you have or have not heard of them, feel free to take a picture of it. They are the largest manufacturer for salon furnitures in the country. Most of you probably have not heard of Kmark because they sell under like 15 different names. As many of you know, I used to run some of the industry's largest chains. They built all of my furniture for those chains. In addition to, they did the custom furniture that we have at Hair & Co. Brooklyn. What I like about their furniture is its quality and it lasts. I also like, because they do big chains, when I sent them custom furniture, they know how to value engineer it so that it costs me less. So if my mirror was, you know, custom, but if I took it down by 1/8 of an inch, it was a standard size, they think of that stuff, right, to save me money. I also like this company because the owner, whose name is Jeff, is an amazing human, and just really good people. So he has created screens in black and white. You can have your logo put on them if you want. We have 15 white ones coming. Yay! So excited to buy screens and PPE. But I think he's done a nice job with the pricing, and he's really trying to make them affordable for everyone, because, you know, he's not looking to make a great living on screens. He wants to build people's salons as they remodel or grow their business in the future. So again, someone that I really like. If you do send them if you do reach out to him, let him know I sent them. But I think it's something, he does a nice job making it aesthetically pleasing, and it's the only thing he does for a living. So I appreciate that in him as well. And then this is how to reach me. If for nothing else, I would love it if everybody will follow us on Instagram. We've got some videos that we're doing to go along with this as well. Also, just so you know, we do have a Fuel for Business program at the Academy coming up in July that I bet you won't be at the Academy in July, just because of everything that we're going through right now. So please keep an eye on our Instagram and our website. We are gonna do, so Fuel for Business is our profit, you know, kind of P&L boot camp program. We're actually going to bring that to Zoom and do it as a remote learning class. And so we're going to lower the price of the class, because obviously we'll be doing it like this, and there won't be some of the exercises and games. There's also going to be some consulting, one-on-one consulting built into the program, so that, you know, we can kind of get down and dirty together as we learn different parts of the modules and get specific into your business, which is what I do in work groups in the class. But since we won't be together, we'll have the opportunity to do it on the side. So keep in mind for that, we're looking to do it around the same timing, but we will take it to a virtual program, so that, and make it very coming out of COVID specific, with hopefully all of us open at that point, and then kind of like, what's the next evolution of what we do. So just so that you know. If you have any other questions, now's your shot. Otherwise, we're done for today.